All right, I'm going to open the room and we'll kick off in 1 minute.
Oh, that's not good. Wait. I don't know what I just did. Okay. That's Can you see this black thing that just came out or no?
Nope, you're good. Welcome. Just going to give a minute for people to join and then we'll kick it off. All right, I will go ahead and kick it off. So welcome, my name is Aileen. I am the Director of Marketing here at Savatar. And today we are talking about how to use business risk to prioritize your cybersecurity budget. So we have Savatar customer here, Alejandro Corpeño from Hello Iconic, and Craig Goodwin and Stephanie Simpson from Savatar, who will be taking us through the webinar and talking about some success stories with Hello Iconic, and also giving a live overview of the business risk tool and going through the assessment. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Steph and Craig. And just a note, we are taking questions at the end. We have some slots for Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up throughout the webinar, just put them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we'll open up the floor for questions at the end. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Aileen. Welcome, everyone. I'm Stephanie Simpson, VP of Platform Development. We've been working hard at launching lots of new features for everyone for Savatar's platform. The big feature that we just launched is business risk, and I'm here today to interview Craig, who is our Chief Platform and Strategy Officer and founder, because he really came up with the whole concept of our business risk tool, and it's specifically based on his experience managing and helping people with business risk in his career. So with that, Craig, do you want to give a little intro as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steph. Welcome, everyone. My name's Craig Goodwin, co-founder of Savatar now. However, have spent the last 18 years or so as a chief security officer within the cybersecurity space, building, managing, operating large-scale cybersecurity programs across global teams for brands like Fujitsu, Monster Worldwide, CDK Global, etc. And as Steph said, super excited to be talking about business risk as it pertains to the Savatar platform, but also business risk more generally. It's definitely one of the tools that I've had in my toolbox over those 18 years that's helped me to be successful when building a business-focused security program. So hoping Steph's not going to grill me too hard, but hoping that there's some useful insights into what business security risk is all about, and how you can use it in your business to drive your security program.
Absolutely. And we also have Alejandro. I know Aileen mentioned that before. Alejandro, I'm going to try not to put you on the spot too much, but you definitely are one of our prized customers, and your feedback is genuinely wanted. So we will talk to that, and then hopefully you can also help us through the demo a little bit. I'll show the demo to everyone at the end, and you can also give some of your feedback on that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Great. All right, so let's start off. Okay, Craig, help us. What is business risk?
Yeah, so it's a nice, easy one to get started. So business risk in its entirety, and I'll touch on what it means for cybersecurity. So let's think about this. When we think about cybersecurity, or we think about security in general, we're often fooled or mistaken into driving it as purely a technical discipline, right? Security has come from the IT world, it's come from the technical space predominantly. And therefore we get put in this box, or we end up in this box where we consider cyber as a predominantly technical thing. But really and truthfully, to make a successful, or build a successful security program, it has to exist within the confines of the business. And actually, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about cybersecurity, or you're talking about the financial health of the business, or you're talking about the strategy of the business. All of those things are risks and opportunities. One of the problems that I've seen for many years in the cybersecurity space is that security people like to think that they're different or special, right? And we come up with brand new ways of doing things. We come up with brand new languages, and you all you got to do is Google cybersecurity, or go on LinkedIn for 5 minutes, and you'll find 50 acronyms that no one outside of security has ever used before. And it's really complicated. And that means that the business really struggles to understand it. So, business risk as a discipline is obviously much wider than cybersecurity, but I think business risk as a tool is something we can really use to help to translate those ostensibly technical security concepts into something that the business understands. The business in general has been dealing with risk forever, right? This isn't something that's come along as a result of security. You go and talk to any board in large or small organizations, they're very conversant in the language of risk, because it's what we deal with every day. But they're not conversant in the language of security. So we have to make the effort to take those technical security concepts, translate them in a way that makes sense to the business. And business risk really helps us to do that if we do it well and we do it effectively.
That makes sense. Sorry. Okay. So in terms of business risk, everything you just talked about, how do our customers, how does everyone actually measure that and quantify business risk?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I think, again, one of the most important things when you're talking about measuring and quantifying business risk has to be doing it in a way that your business understands, right? That is the single most important thing. Definitely one of the most important disciplines that I've learned that made me successful as a chief security officer had nothing to do with security, right? It was about communication. It was about the way that I communicated with the rest of the business. And that's the same when it comes to business risk. What you need to do as a security leader, or even a business leader when you're looking at security, is not reinvent the wheel. Go and find how the business already talks about risk, right? And I mentioned it, there will be methodologies. We talk about financial risk all the time. Go borrow that methodology. Go find that methodology that already exists within your business and use that as the way of measuring and quantifying risk, because then you're not fighting an uphill battle. If you start with a brand new language that no one understands in this technical security jargon, you've got to do 2 years of educating people on what the hell you're talking about before you can start to have any impact and make any change in the business and drive any risk reduction. If you start with a language that they understand, that battle's done for you, right? So on day one, you can start to measure and quantify your risk. You can start to have impact, start to reduce risks, rather than just quantifying them or teaching people how to speak about risk. One of the other things is find something that inspires the business. In previous business that I've worked in, I worked in a large plumbing and heating retail group. And what we did there was we utilized the concept of water leakage, right? So you could go and talk about abstract numbers for risk, right? You can say this risk's a 10 or this risk's a 15 or a 20, but actually no one knows what the hell you mean. Is that good? Is that bad? Like, I need something to quantify that. I need to understand what that means. Now, I worked in a big plumbing and heating retail business, and plumbers understand the concept of water leakage, right? The whole business had come from plumbing background. So they understood the concept of how much water was leaking out of a pipe, or how much water you were losing as a result of bad plumbing, right? And we started to articulate risk in that way. So we started to articulate risk in the sense of losing water from bad plumbing or water leakage out of a particular setup. And the business just got it. They understood it. And actually, it fundamentally matters little what that analogy is that you're using. Ultimately, what the business risk or cyber business risk is designed to do is drive action in the areas that you want to drive action in. And if they understand what the hell it is you're talking about, that's going to be infinitely more easy. One other example quickly, trading firm, right? Worked in a trading firm. They understood stocks and shares, and they understood a star rating system when it came to stocks and shares. So we built our security risk program around a star system, 1, 2, 3, 4 stars, depending on how risky that particular security risk was. Again, the business just got it because the CEO talked in that language when he talked about trading. So he understood what I was saying when I said that's a 3-star risk or that's a 4-star risk, as opposed to a 50 or 60 or some spurious number that I've just picked out of the air. So yeah, a couple of little insights that are hopefully useful.
Yeah, those are great examples. And I don't mean to put Alejandro on the spot here, but just curious, in your business, maybe give a little bit of a background on your business and how you guys do that.
Yeah. So a little bit of background from Hello Iconic. We are a software development company, and we focus on building modern web applications, also mobile applications, TV apps. So everything that runs on the internet usually has a cloud component, all the servers and all the databases. And then there is a client side, like your mobile phone, a tablet, a computer. And since it runs on the internet, it's exposed to security all over, from the moment we are developing it all the way through the development cycle, and also once it's launched on the servers and on the web, right? So it is really important for us to keep an eye on security in every step. So one of the things that we, since we started from a technical background, we started the company just being developers. So we had that, at least that mentality that we know what we're doing, we're not exposed because we are techs. But it's not, I mean, maybe 20 years ago it was like that because the world was simpler. But now there are so many devices, and people now, not tech people, but anyone is using those devices connected to the web, right? So even in our company, we have not just developers now, we have product managers, we have QA staff, designers. So more and more of our devices might have exposure. So one of the things we started doing a couple of years ago was to think about risk in terms of multiple layers. Like one is the immediate one, and probably the smallest one, but it's the first, is the productivity, right? Like what happens if one of our computers gets compromised? That resource, that person can't work for that day. So yes, that's the first one, but it's the smallest one because we can just replace the computer and then the person continues working. But then there is the next layer, like the data that is in that computer. If it gets stolen, the hacker could then access the resources that computer controls. So it can go from an email, that with that email they can go and request forgot password to every other account under that employee, and then compromise servers. So then it scales to more than just the productivity, but legal implications with our clients, data breaches, they can get database access. So it starts growing from there. So the risk, it sounds like it's just one computer, but it's really, it can take down our business and even some of our clients' business. So that's how we measure it, and it becomes really important even at a an employee that is not doing code. Maybe they're an admin person on accounting, but that computer lives within our network. So we don't have really a measurement, and that's one of the reasons we're working also with Savatar, because we don't know cybersecurity at that level. So giving us frameworks or ways to measure it just by going through questions, it makes us think like, we haven't thought about that part. Let's put a tool that tells us, because you can't fix things that you can't measure. So if you apply something that gives you a dashboard and you see these are all of the, let's say, OS versions that you have, and these 50 out of these 50 computers, 15 have an older version, then we know, and then we can fix that. So that's kind of the approach. Like, before starting to quantify, let's start measuring.
That makes sense to me. Any feedback on that, Craig, before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Alejandro's hit the nail on the head. As I mentioned, I think the importance of taking those technical controls, but mapping them to what it means to the business is just critically important. I think too often, as security people, and I'm sure it's not just security people, this happens in a lot of disciplines, right? We presume that everyone knows what we know. Steph knows this because I do it to her all of the time. I presume that everyone knows what I know. So I say things like Alejandro, because we've been working together for a while, Alejandro will say something like, well, it's a no-brainer, right? You don't want hackers to get into your endpoints. But actually, for a business audience, it's not necessarily a no-brainer. That's a complicated conversation, to Alejandro's point, about how much productivity do you potentially lose, right, as a result of that happening, and is it worth it? At the end of the day, and I know we're going to come onto this a little bit more, at the end of the day, it's a balance. And the right answer sometimes to a risk can be to leave it and accept it, right? That's an okay answer. I think as security professionals, we are pre-programmed to not have that as the answer, right? No, you should always buy more. You should always do more security. You should always lock things down more. But actually, in some cases, the right answer is we've measured the risk, we've balanced the risk, we've weighed the options, and actually it will cost us more to put that control in place than we're actually going to lose as a result of it being impacted. And that's something you've got to be open to as a security professional. However, Alejandro made the right decisions, which is fantastic.
Yeah, right, he does. But also, to bring it back to what our title of this is, right, it's also all about how much money do you have to spend? And so what are the priorities? And so, to your point, how do you actually prioritize based on that business risk?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with you, Craig. So, this is something, obviously, you have been doing this for a really long time. You're the one who came up with this, the business risk concept within the tool, and also working with our customers. But how come you came up with that? What gaps did you see in order for us to start to do this?
So what I found was a number of gaps. Firstly, I mentioned it earlier, was in communication, right? Was the way that security communicated with the business. There was a significant gap between, I'll try and give you another example. Alejandro mentioned endpoint security, for example. If I go to the board and I say, I'm going to deal with endpoint security, they go, okay, how do I quantify that risk from endpoints, right? To Alejandro's point, like, what Craig wants to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars protecting our endpoints, but I don't know what that means. It's essentially a finger in the air. Do I believe Craig? Do I not believe Craig? Like, it's a trust thing at the end of the day. It shouldn't be a trust thing. It should be a data-based decision. So what I started to do in a number of businesses I was at was take the business risk, take those business areas, and actually start to map it to those particular risks. So take endpoint security, for example. The actual business risk from endpoint security might be a disruption of business due to ransomware on one of our developers' laptops, right? That could be a business risk. Therefore, we lose productivity, we potentially lose money, we're unable to release, all that kind of good stuff that comes along with it. That is a risk to the business, and guaranteed the CTO, the CEO, your board, your executive team will get that 100%, right? If their developers are out of action, they can't deliver code, they can't make money for the business, They understand that. But does that come across when I say protect endpoints? No, it doesn't. It says Craig wants to go and buy a tool, or Craig wants to go and buy a new toy that he can put on the endpoints because he's the scary security guy that's scared of everything, right? If you tell them, if we do not do this, we potentially lose X amount of money as a result of these developers being out of action for days, weeks, months, years, whatever it might be, or potentially permanently if we lose code as a result of ransomware and can't get access to it, that is mapped to a business risk. And it's not much different, right? It's just a nuance in communication. I'm saying the same thing. The outcome is the same, but it's articulated in a way that the business understands. So that was number one. Number one was about communication for me. Number two was about how those risks map together, right? So what is it that the business is doing that is potentially impacted by security or technical things? And again, we don't often do that, right? We think about these things separately. If you take a software business, for example, you don't think about security as it pertains to your application or product. You think of security as a completely separate thing that Craig runs over here, and we don't have to worry about that because Craig's dealing with it. Business risk and business and security being part of the business means it being part of the business, means it being a fundamental component. Another quick example which highlights that, would you expect a vice president or a senior leader within any business to have zero concept of finance? You wouldn't, would you? They have to manage their budget. They have to manage their money. We expect that of leaders. But do we expect them to understand security? No, because Craig does it, right? Or the CISO does it. And that's not the way to be successful. The CFO cannot be successful doing financial budgets on his own in isolation, sat in his office. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't work. It couldn't work. And that has to be the same for security. We have to help the business to understand what it means. We have to enable them to do it themselves and play a part in business risk and security risk. Otherwise, we'll ultimately fail.
Yeah, and I have a comment there also where you said on communication. In our specific case, and I see one of the questions on the chat is specifically our case. The question is about a person who has a software company, and he says that in pre-sales conversations with clients, they ask a lot about their security and how they keep their endpoints, controlled. And one of the things I wanted to share is that initially when we were talking about endpoint protection, I didn't get, talking about your specific cybersecurity language, I didn't get what you were protecting. I thought you were protecting endpoints like an API endpoint, So you were going to go to our servers and check the endpoints of the software we were building. After discussing it and talking, I understood it's actually our devices, right? Our computers and the personal computers that even some of our, well, not personal, but the computers our people have assigned. So at that point, I'm like, oh yeah, I want that, because the question that the person is saying here is that they don't have a network where all the computers are. People are working from home. And that's precisely our problem. Before COVID, we had our office and everyone was there. So we had our own network with a firewall, and we could block ports and know what packages are going in and out from it, and block certain URLs from being on the computers. And our staff were not taking the computers home. They would leave them at the office and then come back, right? Because those are their work computers. But now they have to work from home. So we have two risks now. The computers are moving because sometimes they're home, sometimes they move to another place and they keep moving. So the risk of those computers being stolen or something in a public Wi-Fi increases. And the other risk is that now they are also, exposed to, since they're home, maybe they leave their computer open and unattended for more time. So it's not that someone in their house is gonna jump in, but it might happen, right? So someone else could use it for personal use and download stuff on it. So those things now made us understand the value of the endpoint protection. And what we did is, use that solution for now. We know, even if the computers are all over the place with different Wi-Fi's, we know if there's something running on them that is suspicious, and we can take action at that point when it's only a suspicion, not when it's a problem. So.
And Alejandro, when we talked about this before, and you also said in the beginning that your biggest risk, your business risk, is losing productivity, right? So in that case, now that you've got people who are remote and working from, and if there's a problem with one or two or even all your devices, how do those people actually work together in a team if they don't have any way to communicate with each other and no way to share all of their, all of the work that they're doing, and then even upload it to the servers or whatever, anything that they're doing, your productivity goes down to zero, basically.
Yeah, it goes to zero. Yeah, so that's the biggest, the first risk, as I mentioned, and then the consequences might be even bigger.
Yeah. Okay. So now, basically, we're talking about the business risk, and how do we understand, we know all these risks, how do we prioritize what kind of money we should put towards what? Security budgets aren't unlimited, obviously. So how do we decide what to prioritize?
Yeah, 100%. And that fundamentally for me is the biggest advantage of utilizing business risk, because it's very easy for me as the security guy. And in fact, it's easy for business people to make assumptions about what the biggest risk to their business is from a cybersecurity perspective. It's easy to look at the news, see the media, see hacking, see everything that's going on, and leap to conclusions about what is the biggest risk to your business from a cyber perspective. But it's not always that when you look at it in more detail. If you think about the crown jewels being the data of the organization, for example, or for Alejandro, it's the people or the productivity, right? Articulating what the real risks are to your business then ultimately drives your security budget. What I see a lot of security leaders do is dive to the latest technology, or grab the latest tool that comes along, or solve a problem that actually is probably 10 steps down the list of risks that you want to solve in priority order, which is great because you're fixing something, but actually you're leaving the top 5, right? Because you're going after the latest, greatest technology. We often talk in Savatar and in CISO circles about IT asset management, right? Which is a great example of something that nobody does well, knowing what you've got and where it is. I often joke that if you sit in a room of CISOs, no matter how big the business, no matter how mature their security programs are, people really quickly change the subject when you start talking about IT asset management, because everyone knows no one does it very well, right? And it's one of those fundamental building blocks, but it's difficult. And if you think about the business risk that is tied to Alejandro's point earlier, that could be one of productivity. It could be one of monetary value. You look at most of the hacks that have occurred over the last 2 years, they've been as a result of a device or an application or something that the business didn't know existed. It wasn't in their list of assets, right? It wasn't in their list of things that they knew was out there. It was a marketing or PR site that someone had used 10 years ago and never taken down. Or it was an old box that sits on the internet somewhere that's associated with a display screen system that, again, was just left hanging out there and no one updated and no one removed. All these kind of things, mapping that to the business risk of productivity or mapping that to the business risk of financial loss makes your CFO sit up. It makes the CEO sit up and go, oh, yeah, actually, I get that now. It's not just paranoia. And that helps to drive our roadmap. So, when Steph comes on to kind of demo the platform a little bit, the hope with what we've built here and certainly what we're going to use this with for our customers is really going to help to have our customers start to think about what are those business risks we're trying to solve for, and how does that build your roadmap or journey? The question that I always ask is to any new CISO, find out what your budget is first, right? So when you go in, I can't believe how many CISOs at a senior level still don't answer this question, because they just go about their merry way and try and get things approved in a kind of scattergun approach and just hope the CFO is going to say yes. What if you started fixing risk number 5 and you spent all your money on risk number 5 and then the CFO suddenly says, oh, you've got no more money? Okay. Well, at least if you started at 1, you've solved the biggest one, right? The biggest risk to the business. And that's what that roadmap or journey helps you to do. Prioritize so that if you're only going to get 10 grand or 20 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand, whatever the number is, whatever you've done, you've solved the biggest things first. And that's what business risk in our platform, that's what business risk generally will help to drive and will help to prioritize.
Absolutely. All right. So I think we talked a little bit about this, but so in terms of the platform itself, I think maybe I can help answer this, but we'll start with you, Craig. So how do we actually, as the Savatar platform, how does that help complement security and also help companies?
Yeah, so we mentioned and we touched on a couple of things. Roadmap or journey is one of the biggest things. What we wanted to do, what we've always wanted to do as a business is to help companies make the right decisions, partner with them to make the right investments. Corey will often be heard saying, we don't want to sell our customers something that they don't need. And this facilitates that, right? It helps the business to understand what their roadmap or journey should look like. To my point earlier, if you've only got 10 grand on security, where should you spend it, right? And that's a tough conversation if you just look out to the world and look at the vendor space and look at the 4,500 different security tools that you could spend your money on. How the hell do you make that decision? How do you decide which one is the most important? Because no doubt every single one of those vendors will tell you that they've got the silver bullet or they've got the one thing that you should buy that's going to solve all your problems and reduce all your risk. The fact is that might be the case, but you're not going to know that unless you utilize something like our tool to find out what those business risks are and solve them. Equally, you might be wasting your money, right? You go through a process of looking at your business risks and you realize, to the earlier point, let's spin Alejandro's example on its head. Actually, he doesn't care about productivity because he knows he's got, 50 other machines sat in the cupboard, or he's got ramp up staff of another 50 that he can get really quickly, right? Whatever the solution is, he might have a solution to that risk, which means actually it's not a particularly high risk for him, right? It's something that he can solve quickly. He's got the resiliency to solve for it. So is he going to go and spend the money to protect that or to reduce that risk? Probably not. It's not number one on its list. The other thing is this is bespoke to your company, right? I often say, if you look at compliance standards or security standards, I can pretty much tell you what the answer to your roadmap is going to look like, because I know from a CISO's perspective or a security perspective what those building blocks look like. What I don't know, and what we're working with our partners to understand, is what their business risks are. What's important to them? What drives their business? For Alejandro, it's productivity. For other businesses, it might be data, right? If you're holding a lot of personal data. So whatever it is that are the biggest risks and whatever drives your business, that's what we need to find out, because then that helps to inform that roadmap or journey, helps to inform the investment that you're making in security, where you're making it, and it makes you look incredible with the board, right? Because you have had the nous and the data to make the right business decisions about where you're investing. The final point I would make is, insurance is a really good example of that. The insurance industry has been around forever. Essentially, what we're doing with security is that, right? Is we're making risk-based calculations and talking in a language that the business understands, hedging our risk, reducing our risk, and making sure that it's effective and that our investments are put in the right place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alejandro, I was going to call on you for a little bit because I know that I've actually seen the aha moment in your eyes when you're like, I think maybe, based on these risk statements, I might want to, make some different decisions. What are your thoughts on this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in general about the Savatar platform and to your question there, like how does it complement and help companies? More than getting to the detail right now on the questions for the risk is, in general, the platform gives us more than just the tools, but also one big component of security, I think, is the awareness of what things you're not doing. So just going through the assessment questions, you start thinking, internally, like, I haven't even thought about that part. Let me go check how we're doing. Because as you go fill the questions on the platform, are things that you're not thinking every day. So it's that exercise of going through it and thinking, have I done anything about it yet or not? Just that gives the leaders of the company that awareness that then can, could be, the source of something else that's going to happen. Some things might be to implement tools, but other things are just education in general for the team, like making all of the company aware of those elements and how important it is to do simple things, right? A lot of the hacking happens because of social engineering. So the safety or security of passwords, the phishing attacks. So all of that, we can, as a company, start putting more emphasis on security on the stuff at the same time that we're implementing tools. So I think that is one of the things it helps. It helps us as a company. And the other thing is that in my business or others like us, that we're not a huge business, but we work with big companies. Usually they make us also fill the cybersecurity assessments that they have. So usually those are like huge spreadsheets that you have to go through and answer one by one. But with Savatar, you already have that because you have the help from the CISO on pre-filling those assessments for you, and you have those answers already there. You have the security policies, so it gives you that. As I think Craig, you just mentioned this insurance industry, right? So I see it a lot like an insurance policy that we know someone is taking care of it, even if it's not active right now, but we know we can go to them if there's a question or if we need to implement something. So we know we have that access. If we don't have an answer to a question that a client is asking about, of what are we doing about, let's say, controlling the password rotation in our stuff, and we don't have a policy, I can go to Savatar and say, what can we do here? And they can advise us, or maybe there's a tool we can add to our membership to take care of it. So that's where I see how it complements a lot of education in the first, and then tools that allow you, and also the journey. It doesn't just tell you you're doing bad here, it tells you this is what you can do about it. And if you want to implement it, we can help you. So
yeah, 100%. It just occurred to me that I haven't told my favorite example of risk perception story. So there's a fantastic book by Dan Gardner. It's called Risk, funny enough, the science of politics and fear. And he tells a great story about 9/11. So the preceding year after the 9/11 attacks in the US, everyone shifted from air travel to road travel. Like everyone was terrified to fly on a plane because of what had happened, because of the pictures that they'd seen on the TV. And their risk perception was that flying's really dangerous, right? Because you saw that, it was prevalent in your mind. You got that visceral feeling, that fear of flying because of that. But actually, road traffic accidents and the number of people that died on the road over the subsequent months as a result of everyone shifting to road travel was significantly higher than would ever have happened if those people had been flying on planes, right? So it's a perfect example of where your perception of risk is very often not backed up by the data, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to use the data from the platform, the data that we all have built up, the experience that I've built up, the experience that Corey's built up, Stephanie and the whole team. We're building that into the Savatar platform so that you don't make those mistakes. You don't make those gut judgment calls. You utilize the data from your security program and your business to make informed decisions about where your security and risk investment should go.
Absolutely. Before the next question we have basically is around, we've kind of gone in already to Heliconic. We were going to actually go into the tool and show you the tool, but we do have one question that I think would be great to answer before we actually head in and look at the tool. So I think, Peter, you had a question around business risk and the actual categories that we were talking about. So strategic, operational, and it could be reputational, operational. So Craig, do you want to talk a little bit more to what those business risk categories are that can kind of also have an impact from security?
Yeah, I mean, again, it massively depends on the organization. I can certainly talk to some of the ones that I've used in the past. I think try and do this now. Put me on the spot off the top of my head. So I think the kind of ones that I've used before, economic risk, which is about external markets. Certainly in larger business, how does that impact your business? How do changes in the economy, changes in the way the world functions? COVID is probably a good example of that, right? The global pandemic, how that affects the economy, how that subsequently affects your business. Compliance is a big thing, right? There's lots of regulatory fines out there, not just from a security perspective, but from data protection perspective, from legal perspective. There's a ton of regulations based on where you are in the world, how you're dealing with data, all the things you can think about from a compliance perspective. So that's always a big risk conversation. Of course, security, cyber, fraud, that kind of stuff. Financial is obviously the most traditional one. So the financial risk to the business, have you got the buffers, have you got the resiliency from a cash flow perspective to keep the business going, come what may. A couple of other examples, reputational. Reputation is always a good one and a good conversation within cyber, because it's something that people often overlook, how something would impact your reputation enough to dent your productivity or prevent you from getting new customers or making as much money. Operational, we mentioned, so the risks of running and operating your business. Well, I don't know, the list goes on. Competition is another one. So competitive risk, like, how slow or fast are you in comparison with your competition, and how does that potentially affect you? Liquidity, market risk, they're all kind of economy and financial driven. So I think that's probably a good starter for 10 in terms of risk categories.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answered Peter's question. If not, you can add more to the chat, and we'll answer more in the Q&A. I'm going to now go to our demo. All right. Awesome. So for those of you who have not become a Savatar Platform member, Savatar Platform is, so basically Savatar is a cybersecurity as a service company powered by the Savatar Platform. We have, for any of you, anyone can come on. It's a freemium. As a freemium membership, you get, in a freemium membership, you get a free monthly external scan. You also get free 30 minutes consultation with the vCISO team that we have, which includes a free assessment. And the assessment actually includes also results. So those results come in a score, and also actually the score distribution, and includes the opportunities to improve. So how you actually can improve your results from that assessment. We give a journey. Craig and Alejandro talked about that a lot. So there's a journey specified and personalized for you to take you through how you can help fix those assessment results. And then once you become a subscription member, so if you purchase one of the subscriptions that we have, traditionally, I'd say probably 90% of our customers have at least threat and vulnerability management, IT asset management, or secure endpoint management. Once you become a customer, then you get to see a lot more. So Sidekick results is actually how, for instance, with Side Value, you get to see how quickly we can get you to maintain and remediate status. Right now, we're at approximately 60 days. We guarantee 90 days. And then you actually get to see also on a regular basis the actual activities that we're doing. So we're very transparent. What do we need to do in order to get you to that 90 days? And then also after the 90 days, we are continuously working to keep you at a remediated state. Okay, so that was a little bit of a plug of the rest of the platform, but specifically today we're here to talk about business risk. Hopefully you got a lot of background from Craig on business risk itself, but the tool that we built is around working on those and understanding what the business risk is for you and your company. So we have some default risk statements that the VC-SO team, or actually you could do yourself, you could DIY, but you might as well take advantage of the VC-SO team and work with them. So for instance, if you're working with Craig, he would start you off on maybe the first risk question, ask you that question. Hackers or malware may attack and control systems that have not been detected, controlled, and monitored. In that situation, sometimes that is a high impact to a company, and maybe it wouldn't. I was just working with someone yesterday. Yes, it would be a high impact, but the likelihood is low. This changes per company. So when that happens, when you actually start to have a conversation, you make changes to the impact and likelihood, then there's an initial risk score. And then Craig talked about it before, that depending on the business, you may decide if this is a high priority for you, or maybe this is not as high a priority for you. So you might just accept it or even ignore it. In this situation, I think I want to actually mitigate it. And once I mitigate it, then the resulting score is actually low. So you can start to see how these statements move around your heat map. In this case, it began in the bottom right quarter and then improved into the green. So we went from yellow to green. And also the other thing here is we can leave comments. So in this situation, it's a statement that is identifying something that might happen in your environment, but then we can actually connect it to what is the actual business, what could happen in your business that your board members or someone else might understand. So in this case, for instance, with Alejandro, maybe he would say, my business risk would be it would be productivity, and we could save that. You can basically, we have 18 statements right now that are already in here. We go through. Craig, anything else you want to add to this?
No, I would just say, you've articulated it well, Steph. I think, if you think about risks in general, the general flow that we would do here is that as a new customer to Savatar, or even, upfront before you've become a customer, we would go through the process of articulating that left-hand side, the initial risk score to begin with. So what does your business look like before you've done anything, right? And that would be articulated then on your heat map down the bottom. And as we talked about through this webinar, that then helps to drive the program. So where's my biggest risk? Where's my bottom left risk that I really need to address? Thanks, Steph. My apt demo helper there. For example, for this risk statement, if we were to come in cold, you haven't done any cybersecurity at this point, we believe the impact of someone or an attacker having control over your system is high, because it would impact your business like Alejandro's from a productivity perspective. Your business couldn't do what it needs to do to make money as a result of that happening. The likelihood is currently high because you don't have any controls in place. All of your staff have admin rights. All of your staff have free access to the internet. All of the staff can download whatever the hell they want, whenever they want to do it. They can click on whatever they want, whenever they can. They're all running the production AWS instances direct from those very laptops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the likelihood of that happening, actually, because you've got zero controls at this point, is probably high as well. So that firmly puts that risk statement, in the bottom left-hand corner, big red, need to do something about this, probably worth having a look at, right? Then what will happen, and once we've done that for all the risks, let's just pretend they've all been done, and that risk is still the furthest left and the biggest red one. We would then say, well, okay, that's probably number one. What do we want to do about it? In this particular case, we would say we're going to put some mitigating controls in place. We're going to add IT asset management might be the solution, or threat and vulnerability management, or in this case, probably SEMP or secure endpoint management. And that would then move that risk down to a low, because you've now got those controllers in place. You're now effectively controlling the risk associated with malicious or outdated software being installed on one of your end users' computers. And then it's really easy to be able to show the transition from that. So when we're talking to an executive team, and this is the game changer with business risk, right? When we're talking to the executive team now, we can say, that's where we were, right in that red bit. Now, as a result of implementing controls, we have moved it into the top right-hand corner and we're green, and we're comfortable, or are we comfortable, with the amount of risk that that now poses to the business. So that is how this tool facilitates strategy and roadmap, but also helps to facilitate those business risk conversations with the board and with the executive teams.
Great. All right. Aileen, I think we probably have some questions. Did you want to call out any of the questions that are coming up?
Yes, we have a few questions, and while we're answering them, if you have any ones you didn't submit yet or ones that come up, just feel free to send them along. So the first one, how long does the business risk process take from starting to solving issues?
Good question. So it depends. I mean, you can run through this questionnaire in probably 5 minutes, Steph. I don't know how quickly we've done it, but it's all about putting thought and effort into this, right? It's all about everyone that knows me knows that I'm very passionate about the fact that there's a big difference between compliance and security, and this is a great example of that, right? For a compliance standard to say you do business risk, of course, you could run through this in, I don't know, I'm going to test Steph now. 2.5 minutes or something. I don't know how quickly you get through it, but we'll have a race. 2.5 minutes to get all your risk statements done. You could do that, right? But how effective is that? Just going to try now. How effective is that as a business tool, right? And actually, the value in what we're doing here is about driving conversation, and I mentioned it earlier, perception of risk is different from what the actual data shows. So when you're going through this, you might be surprised, when you're talking to the business and you say, what is the impact from, unmonitored ports, for example, perhaps it's something you haven't considered. And in a conversation with the IT team, you realize that in fact, that is a much higher risk than you had considered it to be. So that's what drives the conversation. So actually, how long does it take? Probably do it in 3 minutes, but in reality, it's about the process. It's about learning. It's about helping to inform the security process. And of course, it's supposed to be continuous. This isn't a one and done thing. This tool is designed to be updated on a regular basis by us, by you, and it helps to inform your program as you go. Risks never stay the same. So overnight, something could change outwardly, something could change in the business that moves that risk right back into the red again, and then you need more controls. You need to do something different about it. So it's an ongoing, continuous process, but I would say dedicate as much time as you can, because it's really useful for informing your business outcomes.
Thanks, Craig. And I forgot to mention, you do have the ability to raise your hand if you're in the audience. So we do invite people, up on stage, I guess you could say, to talk. So if you wanted to ask directly, just raise your hand and I'll allow you to talk. So Jaqueen asks, is this service available worldwide? The answer is yes. We have, customers, around the world. So get in touch with us if you have any specific questions or want to talk further. And then Sean asked, I assume that there are dashboards or reports suitable for board level presentation and discussions throughout the process. And
yes,
Craig and Steph are going to like this one.
Yes, Steph touched on it. I'll give you a high level, and then Steph can perhaps show you some of it. But she's touched on it already. There are sidekick dashboards, there are compliance dashboards, and now we have the risk statement dashboards as well. One of the fundamental reasons that I built this platform is because security is terrible generally at communication, but also I used to spend, I don't know whether I should give this away, but I used to spend probably 2 full-time FTEs on a quarterly basis for about a month building a PowerPoint presentation for my board, right? Because it was important. But Is it important enough that I spend 2 FTEs for a whole month to build a presentation? I'm not sure, when they could be actually reducing risk. And the aspiration behind what we've built here and what Steph built here is to not have to do that anymore, particularly in small to medium-sized businesses. So the aspiration between our sidekick results dashboard, as we call it here, or the executive dashboarding, is that this is your presentation for the board. This is your presentation for your executive team, right? It shows you the business roll up from a sidekick operational perspective or from a compliance perspective that enables you to deliver that to your board or your executive team on a monthly, quarterly, whatever it is basis. And it gives you that and equips you to do that in real time so that you don't have to go away and prepare your board deck. So you can download it as a PDF. You can utilize it to educate and articulate the organization around a security program.
Thanks, Craig. And then we did get a few questions around who in the organization should be filling out this assessment, and how involved is Savatar? Is it a do it together? Is it a do it yourself tool?
Great question. Yeah, I love that question. So first one, it really does range depending on the type of organization you are and the size of organization you are. And I'm talking about the first part of the question here about who should fill it out. Predominantly in our customer base, it will be the technology leader or the security leader, right? So if it's a director of security, a CISO, whoever owns security for the organization, or someone who owns business risk or technical risk. So the CTO, the CFO, we have a real range of different stakeholders within the business. And quite frankly, they all add value in different ways. The key to this is not necessarily who is doing the filling out, but it's the conversations you're having, right? So I would encourage everyone who's using this to use it as a tool to have conversations with the business. For example, we mentioned malware on the endpoints. If the CFO is driving business risk, I wouldn't expect him to have an in-depth understanding of how much impact malware on an endpoint would have to his business. So he needs to go and ask, right? And this tool facilitates that. Go ask the IT leader, go ask the CTO, what would be the impact of this happen? How would we recover? What would our resiliency look like? And it drives those conversations about business risk that build relationships, build trust, which is a good pro quo of this platform that we haven't mentioned yet. I remember that one. But then helps you to articulate these risk statements in a way that then builds your roadmap or your journey. So I think that's really important. And then depending on the size of the organization, as an organization grows, different people, you might have a risk function even that are responsible for doing these kind of things. But when you're smaller, on the smaller end, it could be a multitude of different stakeholders. I've talked too much and forgotten the second part of the question. Aileen, what was it?
How involved is Savatar in mitigating and filling out the assessment?
Yeah, so we have our CISO solution, which is essentially a virtual CISO, as most of you would know it, complemented with CISO that powers it, which is our platform component that Steph's got on the screen here. If you're subscribed to our CISO solution, then this can be 100% fully managed for you, right? So we will sit down with you, we will articulate your business risk, we'll talk you through these risk statements, we'll build you your heat map and roadmap on your behalf, acting as your CISO in conversation with the team. But also we've made it purposefully self-service as well. So if you want to go in and do this yourself, if you've got a good perspective on what your business risk looks like, once you're subscribed to CISO, you can simply go in, build this for yourself, and utilize this in your own way within the business. So we can do it for you. You can do it yourself. Both those options are on the table.
Yeah, I think as a client, at least my experience and my suggestion is that you can do both. Like first, you can go and try to do it yourself, because internally, as Craig said, at a small business, maybe we don't have a person that's we centralize security on. Is a combination, like maybe the CEO, the CFO, the CTO. So someone goes in and starts looking at it, and then you start a conversation internally. You bring the CTO and ask, do you know what we're doing here? And you start asking the questions as you go. And what you're doing there is you're preparing your own questions that you're gonna throw back to Savatar. Once you can schedule a call with them afterwards, and then you sit down with the assessment and go through it with them and say, like, for question one, we think this is our answer, but maybe we don't understand a part of the question, or we don't know what exactly you're asking, and then we go through it with Savatar. So one thing is you don't have to fill it in one sit. You can save your progress and then come back. So it might take a couple of days for you, but the point is to get it. You don't need to fill it up in 2 minutes, because then the value is not great. You just think through it and make sure you're answering in a way that is going to help you implement the solutions.
Thank you. And Joe asked another question. He actually had to go, but we can follow up with him. He asked, does the tool handle risk for 12 different products, where different products may have different platforms and risk profiles, or is it a weakest link type of situation?
Currently, it's done at the organizational level right now, but it's a great suggestion, and it's something that Steph's got built into the roadmap. So the ability to assess risk associated with a particular product or a particular business unit, or we've added business context now into our issues part of the dashboard, and we're going to bring that into the risk components over the course of time. So Joe, I think that's a great suggestion and something we've considered. So that's good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think that is a wrap. Any last minute comments you guys wanted to make?
Thanks everyone. Super excited to share this. We're going to do more of these in the future, as Steph does fantastic work with the Hello Iconic team and everyone else internally to build the platform and continue to add value to the customers and to the platform itself. So thanks everyone for taking the time, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. And we'll send the recording to everyone. So if you, Rodney has a question. We'll send the recording to everyone. So if you, had to tune out for a few minutes, you can go back and listen. I'll let Rodney ask really quick what his question is.
What is the number of employees that you guys consider the maximum that you like to handle? I'm going after some casinos now, and I was wondering.
Yeah, good question, Rodney. To be honest, our customer base is pretty diverse. We've got everything from 50 employees right up to I think our largest customer is about 220,000 employees or something. So we're relatively comfortable. We've got a reference customer. So one of our customers is Circa Las Vegas. So we
I heard about that. That's good.
Yeah,
okay.
Gaming and leisure side. So we're more than comfortable in there. But the answer is whatever you throw at us, Rodney, we'll figure it out.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Have a good day.
Thank you.